Hello, nature lovers, and welcome to another exciting episode of Environmental Systems and Societies. Today's is all about population dynamics, and we're really going to get into the human population factors today. So the major points I want to go over is what demographics is, which is the study of population change, the Human Development Index and how it measures a country's well-being, the factors that affect population size, and how we measure this population size. So let's start with demographics. Demographics is the study of the dynamics of population change. And really what we're doing is we're looking at all the different components of it. We're looking at ethnic makeup, the wealth, the gender, the amount at each age group. We're looking at how all those things combine. And when we take those numbers and we combine them, the United Nations has developed this index called the Human Development Index to gauge the well-being of a country. And the higher you score on there, that typically means you have a better standard of living, you're expected to live a long time, you have good education, you have a high domestic product, gross domestic product for the country, and it tends to mean you live in a wealthy country. Okay, so if you're ranked high, you're called an MEDC, or a more economically developed, and if you're low, you're an LEDC. MEDCs typically are industrialized. A lot of times they're called industrialized countries, and they have a high GDP. Their populations are rich. Usually people don't starve to death. They have low poverty and low population growth. LEDCs, on the other side, are less industrialized or have hardly any industry at all. They have a lot of raw materials, but it tends to be taken by MEDCs. Their population has a lower GDP and there's more poverty. They have high population growth rates, and whereas MEDCs tend to be European and North American countries, LEDCs tends to be everybody else. Okay? So when we look at these two things, how does this actually affect the population, or the environment, How does this population, this well-being of a country affect it? Well, more people require more resources, more people produce more waste, more people have a bigger impact on the environment. Population controls how much resources, so we might be able to stave off media attention. But if we don't, you see the result. Not nice. So, if we want to control population size, what are the factors that do affect it? Well, there's really four factors that affect population size: birth rate, death rate, immigration, and emigration. Okay, immigration is how many come in, emigration is how many goes out. It's not, those four things are not just humans, but all populations. But back to humans, we use four things to really measure human growth. We have the crude birth rate, crude death rate, doubling rate, and natural increase rate. You might guess that you should pause and write these down. Crude birth rate is the number of births per 1,000 individuals in a population per year. Right now, that's about 20.3 for humans. All right, okay, so we have 20.3 births per 1,000 people per year. Okay, now death rate is exactly the same thing, but death rate per 1,000 per year. Crude birth and death rates are calculated by dividing the number of births or deaths by the population size. So put it on pause, try and write as an equation. You won't be able to do it. Here it is. Births divided by population size times 1,000 equals crude birth rate. I didn't get that done fast. Deaths divided by population size times 1,000 equal crude death rate. That's how you calculate it. You'll want to know how to do that. Natural increase rate is when we take those numbers. So once we've calculated crude birth rate and crude death rate, we put them into an equation that gives us our natural increase rate. And that's how much the population is growing or shrinking. And all you do is you subtract the crude death rate from the crude birth rate, and then you divide whatever that answer is by 10, and that will give you a percentage. Okay, that'll give you a percentage for the growth rate of the planet, or how much the rate is dropping on the planet, depending on deaths and births. Now, we can use the natural increase rate to determine how long it's going to take to double. So our doubling rate is how long it takes the population, either of a country or of a planet, to double in size. Turns out 1% NIR will make the population double in 70 years. And you can do this in reverse. You can take 70, divide it by whatever our NIR is, which is 1.07, and then when you put it all together, that tells you that it's going to take us 65 years to go from 7 billion to 14 billion. So now let's look at this just a little bit closer, especially this birth rate, because this is a big deal. a lot of times to kind of see another measurement of that, we use fertility rate. They are not the same thing. I will talk about that in a minute. Fertility rate's the average number of children born to each woman over her lifetime. Now, if you think about it, it makes sense that a woman and her husband, or a woman and her partner, they have to have 2 kids to replace them when they die. So 2 is the magic number. If you have more than 2 kids, like this family, then the population of the country is going to go up. If you have less than 2 kids, the population is going to go down. It turns out that MEDCs tend to have a number around 2, LEDCs tend to have a higher number. The thing to remember is these are not the same thing, because total crude birth rate is a percentage of the total population, whereas fertility rate is only of a woman. Like, how much is she reproducing? Human population growth. This is the big question, guys. What's the maximum number of people that we can sustain on the planet? Nobody knows. The size of the population is not the only factor. If you think about it, as the HDI goes up for people around the world, then their resource use goes up, and that affects the carrying capacity. But as we get more efficient at growing things, as we get more efficient at using things and producing less waste, that also affects resource use. So the real answer is it's sort of this race between how population growth is increasing and how we use resources are increasing or decreasing. So you put all that together, that really makes it an unknown question. All right. So what we've gone over today is what demographics is, what the Human Development Index is, how they figure that out, what are the 4 factors that affect population size of countries in the world, and what are the components that we use to measure all that. And I know there's a lot of terminology, so if you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, peace out, homie. Targier.